So hello everyone, welcome to the Eastern Overlook on Mount McGregor here at Grant Cottage State Historic Site in northern Saratoga County. The beautiful view you see behind us is the upper Hudson Valley, and we're sitting at about 950 feet above the sea level here on the mountain, and we're at the very southern edge of the Adirondack Mountain Plateau. And so we have a very dramatic view all the way over to the Green Mountains of Vermont. And this is going to come into our conversation today because we're going to be talking about not only the history of this ridge line here called the Palmertown Ridge, but also we will be talking about the future and public access to this place that has drawn visitors for many years. So over 150 years, individuals have come here, and mainly they've come here for health and relaxation and recuperation, and certainly that's part of the story, but we're excited to look into the future as well. And I'll let my fellow panelists here introduce themselves. So we have Ray here.
Ray O'Connor. I'm a councilman here on the Wilton Town Board. Local business guy, been involved with economic development projects and also with conservation projects over the many years I've lived here in town.
And hi, I'm Laura Kipper. I'm the Palmertown coordinator working for Open Space Institute and Saratoga Plan.
And Ray, you didn't mention that did you say you're an avid hiker?
I'm an avid hiker.
He's an avid hiker. He's in his hiking outfit here today. He's representing the hiking contingent as well, the people who really enjoy the trails that already exist on this mountain. And of course, Ray has been all over the Northeast as well, hiking anywhere he can find and gathering as many hiking patches as he possibly can. So we're happy to have his input as well as Laura's to really talk about again what the current features are that are available here to the public on the Palmertown Range, but also what the future holds as well. So I'm going to start off with Laura. Laura, what makes the Palmertown Range an important resource? And I'm going to have you focus, if you could, on the environmental side of it. What is so important about this place?
Sure. So the Palmertown Range is a 40,500 acre green corridor that connects Saratoga Springs downtown all the way up to Murrow Lake State Park and then west to the village of Corinth. And within this range, there's already 8,000 acres of conserved land with thousands more that we're hoping to conserve in the future. And with this, during a landscape analysis study a few years ago, the Palmertown Range was determined to be an extremely resilient part of the landscape, which means it protects natural habitats, wildlife, drinking water sources, wetlands, all these important ecological features. And it will also help us become more climate resilient as climate change happens in the future. So it's an incredibly important piece of land that rests right at the southern foothills of the Adirondack and connects the Green Mountains to the Adirondack Park, which is just an incredible opportunity to have.
And Ray, if you could discuss maybe some of the recreational opportunities and what really drew you to the Palmertown Range and what already exists here as far as a trail network.
Sure. When I think about all of the things I love about hiking, they're all present here along the Palmertown Range. There's streams to cross, mountains to climb, the sounds of the birds and the other animals and the forests, the trails, the serenity of certain spots like Lake Bonita, Lake Ann. Another thing I love about being out is scenic overlooks. You can overlook Murrow Lake. There's a beautiful spot along the Hudson River where you overlook a bend in the Hudson. The tranquility of being out on this property, it's not just great exercise and great for the body, but it's just as important for the mind and the soul.
Wonderful answer. I would say the same thing. It does. And like you said, a lot of people they focus on possibly the higher mountains and the more dramatic mountains. You could say scenery of the more northern Adirondacks, but this has the flavor. It really has the flavor of the Adirondack Park, even though it's just outside what they call the blue line or the border of the Adirondack Park. It really has the nature of it. It's really an in-between between the Hudson Valley and the Adirondacks, just over the other side of the ridge. And so it really does give you that terrain, that steep terrain. It's a good training ground as well for people that are looking to go further north into some of the steeper hikes and things like that, and the more adventurous hikes, you could say. But you can have quite an adventure up here, I would say.
Yes.
I've heard people have used the trails to put together nearly 20-mile hikes up here on the ridge. I mean, there's quite a bit that already exists, and again, we'll talk about a little bit more about what's on its way.
If you're looking for a tough day, you don't have to go any farther than this area. You can get in a couple of thousand feet of elevation change and a couple of dozen miles of trail. So if you're hardcore, this is your spot.
I like to, personally, I like to park at what they call the Spring Trailhead, which is right next to the Hudson River on the other side of the ridge, on the western side. And I hike up to, well, it's called the Spring Overlook now, but it used to be called the Western Overlook. And it's a beautiful view. And I think it's about 600 or 700 feet elevation gain, a very, very steep trip up there and a very short, hike. But it gets you all nice and sweaty, and you come back down, and then you can just go across to the rocks and go into the river and take a dip. And so there's nice opportunities there as well for hiking, and then getting right across the road. You can put a boat in, and you can kayak on the Hudson River. So in some of the locations, or in Murrow Lake. Or potentially one of the other lakes that will possibly be part of this Palmertown Range project.
Right.
So there's a lot of opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the unique opportunities within the Palmertown Range is that the terrain is so varying that you have this feel of the Adirondacks in certain portions, but in other portions there are really easy grades and great walks that, especially what we've seen in the pandemic, people have been stuck at home. You can take your lunch break and go on a nice local trail and a walk, and you still get outside and you get those mental health benefits, but it's close to home.
And Laura, you make a good point about the varying terrain. Great for young families.
Right.
I've had my grandkids out when they were as young as 1 year old, out on these trails, and it's just a bit of magic every time you go out there.
Yeah, and it can be a bit of when you live in this region, I remember doing a lot of hiking myself in the Northeast, and it can be an investment in time to drive long distances to get to these other very popular Adirondack hikes, and this was much more convenient, saved on gas money and all that. And I did notice, as you mentioned, during COVID, especially last year, there was an incredible amount of use. I remember driving by, I live in Corinth on the other side of the ridge, and driving by the Lake Bonita trailhead, which was opened up a few years ago. That was packed to the point where there was cars on the sides of the road. Possibly getting to the point of overuse. But they are starting to, I know Murrow State Park is working on expanding the actual parking facilities for some of their trailheads at this time. And so you kind of have to grow with the demand. But even with all that demand, you can still get out on these trails, and I assume you guys can agree, and still feel like you're a world apart.
Yeah.
Even though you're only a few miles from an interstate, even though you're, have a lot of other users within the space, you can still have serenity, and you can still have peace. And I think that's one nice thing, because it's a lot of opportunities. The more trails you put in, the more opportunities there are.
Sure.
So we'll segue this into, we'll kind of talk about what Mount McGregor was and how it became what it is today. So basically, this is Grant Cottage State Historic Site. Its significance is because President Ulysses S. Grant spent his final weeks here. He was brought here for his health to a cottage on this mountaintop, and this is where he passed away in 1885. And so that's its main significance, but there's a lot of history surrounding the use of this particular place on the Palmertown Range, this place called Mount McGregor. It was originally called Palmertown Mountain, and a local man, Duncan McGregor, bought some land here in the 1860s and 70s, and he built a small resort, a small little hotel here, and people would bring carriages up from the nearby international resort town of Saratoga Springs to get out of the summer heat up here to the mountain breezes. So this place was always billed as a healthy environment in the pines here, in the woods, in the cooler, in the shade. And it was a place of rest and relaxation from the city. And so a lot of people would come up here in the summers, and it operated as a seasonal resort up into the 1880s and 1890s. During that era, there was a big expansion of the resort, and a 100-room hotel was placed here on the top of the mountain, as well as a train reaching from Saratoga Springs up the mountainside, which was an exciting ride up the mountain at the time. And so people were coming here, and the advertisements for this resort really reflected why people sought this place out, and that was because it had the healthy air. Even one of the advertisements said, if your hay fever is not cured, your room and board at the hotel is free. So I think there was always that aspect that people came here to escape the heat, but also to find peace, find solitude, and find health. The resort era ended in 1897 with the burning of the hotel. The cottage survived and remained an attraction up here. In the early 20th century, the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company actually bought the mountaintop and, interestingly enough, put in a tuberculosis sanitarium. So patients would be sent up here from New York City. Up to 350 patients could be housed in this large facility that was built here. And again, for recuperation, for the healthy mountain air. They used to sleep the patients out on the porches under heavy blankets, even in the cold, so that they could get the healthy, fresh air up here. So there was a real community up here. And people remember this, and people have stories about this. And this really doesn't just have historical significance, but also cultural significance in this area. There's families here that can trace their lineage all the way back to the earliest settlers, even in the area of Lake Bonita, just about a mile down the ridge here. And so there's a lot of family history, community history here, and people remember these different eras on the mountain. The tuberculosis hospital would close at the end of World War II, and the state turned it into a veterans rest camp. So veterans that had gone through the hardship of war, it was a place for them to come and be with their fellow veterans and decompress from that terrible experience and try to transition back into civilian life. So it was a place for again, another place for rest and relaxation in the beautiful natural settings we have here. And so from then it became a developmental center, which operated here in the 60s and 70s. And the developmental center moved to the valley down here, and this became a minimum medium security prison, which operated for the next 3 or 4 decades. And it had a couple of nicknames. And I only mention them because, again, we're talking about the beautiful environment. And they named this Magic Mountain, or we're in the town of Wilton. They also named it the Wilton Hilton. So this correctional facility actually was very popular, with inmates as well as correctional officers because of its beautiful natural surroundings. And so I suppose if you were on good behavior, you could be sent up to Mount McGregor, to Magic Mountain. So even as a correctional facility, it had that allure of the natural beauty. So it's always had that. Now the prison closed in 2014, and it's been a challenge for the historic site that's left up here alone. But we're excited to see a lot more visitors coming up here and engaging with the historic site, which we believe is a real historical focal point of Mount McGregor and the Palmertown Range in general. And we look forward to people still come here for relaxation, rest, not just to the historic site, but the other places that are now available. when the prison closed, a area just a mile south that I mentioned, Lake Bonita, was opened up to public use, and there is a nice trail surrounding that lake. So things have opened up a bit, and we are certainly looking forward to the future. And in the days of the resort, there was many carriage trails and on horse bridle paths that crisscross the mountaintop, and some of those are actually being discovered and reused for paths as well. So there's that historical context to the actual pathways up here. We're up to the modern era now. So we've got this wonderful historic site. We do have a network of trails here, you know, to some extent along the Palmertown Range. Tell us a little bit about what Saratoga Plan and its partners have plans for and in the future.
Right. So the Palmertown Range and the trails that are developing throughout is a true community project, and with that, a guidance committee to help lead these lofty goals was created, and this includes all the town officials within the Palmertown, Skidmore College, Saratoga Plan, OSI, Saratoga Springs City, and then the state agencies such as Office of Parks and Rec and New York State DEC. It's really just everyone is coming together to make this goal of having these amazing trails in this beautiful natural green corridor happen. And so the guidance committee was extremely grateful that they were awarded a large grant from the Sarah B. Folk Foundation, charitable foundation. And so with this money, they were able to hire professional trail consultants and designers, as well as acquire land that would create necessary linkages to have these miles of trails. So where we're at is the master plan for the Palmertown Range, and it's actually called the Sarah B. Folk Friendship Trails, which will be 50 plus miles of trails that really center on friendship and inclusivity within the community. And through that, a bunch of community engagement has been completed, so we can really hear what barriers there are to accessing trails, what people want in trails, like water views was a big thing we heard from everyone, wheelchair accessible trails, multi-use trails, you know, really just weighing what everyone wants to make sure everyone gets a little piece of the Palmertown Range and the feel of the Adirondacks, and that there's a little bit of trail for everyone. And that's really what the friendship and inclusivity, it's at the core of designing this huge trail system throughout this incredible range. And we want everyone to be able to enjoy this natural and scenic beauty.
I see why they chose Laura as a spokesperson. That sounds great. I was drawn in. That sounds great.
I'm
it does.
fully into this.
And I love the enthusiasm. But you know what you mentioned about trying to incorporate as many viewpoints and stakeholders, people that are interested in different types of recreation, different types of access. That's so important. To draw as many people in as you can. You can't necessarily make everybody happy all the time,
right.
But you can try to make try to work with different groups, and I think that's the right way to approach it. Ray, what kind of things do you think would be some nice additions? I mean, we talked
Sure.
about 50 miles of trail,
Yeah.
but is there anything you're excited about that you know about that you maybe have seen in the plans or?
Yeah, there's a number of different things. One is I think there's something for everybody. Regardless of how you like to use the outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
There are folks who like snowmobiling, folks who just like to walk along the trails, and and other uses. And I think another big component of this is for folks that don't know me, you wouldn't know it by my hiking attire or my hippie hiking shirt, but I spent 35 years in the banking business. And there is an important economic component to this.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Areas that have been successful with conservation, with outdoor recreation, have also had ancillary success economically with hospitality businesses, restaurants, the explosion of brew pubs. I talked to one property owner on Route 9, as a matter of fact, who's making plans.
Yes, they
for
want to
one
be a
of those.
trailhead.
Exactly. Yeah. So having access from the trail down to area businesses, and the folks that are just coming and going, whether they're local or whether they're coming from some distance, it's a very big component of what makes this kind of project successful.
That's a wonderful component to bring into the discussion because, as you said, there are a lot of communities in this, not just the southern Adirondacks, but throughout the Adirondacks. They're very small communities, and they were based on the lumber industry or a mill industry, and some of those industries are gone now. Some of the railroads that used to go through these areas are gone, and so they are not really thriving communities necessarily. Unfortunately at this time, but some of them are starting to reinvent themselves as outdoor recreation hubs. So places that may wouldn't have a place otherwise. Things like mountain biking shops or small cafes that may struggle a little bit.
Sure.
in areas that are a little bit more rural. They would have a steady stream of users coming into their area. As you said, they can go to the extreme of actually having a trail connection maybe from their property if possible. So I think that's a great way to integrate community with businesses in the community, the recreational and the business side. It's wonderful to, and with a place that's growing so quickly. Saratoga County is the fastest growing county in New York State. And that has to be considered as well. The areas that are still as natural as they can be are places to be protected and to be developed for everybody's use if possible. I know that you have to have development to a certain extent. Trees have to be cut down, but that's progress. But you can balance it. You can balance
Right.
it, and that's the idea: is how to balance the progress with having green spaces, places for people to get away and to experience nature close to their homes, though, in a very convenient place. And I think Palmertown Range really offers that.
Right.
yeah.
That's actually exactly what the Palmertown project partners are trying to achieve. In a 2018 study, they broke all these goals into 4 main categories, and it was education and outreach, recreation, conservation, and then economic development. And so within that, we have these groups of people who are on subcommittees who are working to blend all these needs and wants and goals into one cohesive, Palmertown Range. So we want to boost all the local businesses. We want to drive local economic development. We want to create a recreational hub where people come and visit and stay at a local hotel and hike and go to a local brew pub and, enjoy all the trails as well as everything that the towns and cities have to offer within this area. So we're trying to blend everything together in a cohesive way.
Laura, haven't the Chambers of Commerce and Discover Saratoga, the Convention and Tourism Bureau, have they all signed on to this concept?
Yes, they have all been great partners, and they're really excited about this. And as part of the Economic Development Subcommittee, which you actually used to lead, we're developing a business inventory list. So all the types of local businesses within the Palmertown Range, we're first off just figuring out who they are, making sure we get in touch with them. And we want to really blast this information to people who are visiting or people who may live here who aren't aware of these things, or help people plan a weekend if they want to go out and do a hike and then camp somewhere and be near restaurants. We want to have all that information available for people, especially since these small local businesses were hit so hard during the pandemic. We want to do everything possible to make sure we sustain these valuable businesses and boost local economic development as much as we can.
And that's a really good way for us to segue into community involvement. So that's a big thing here, and Ray's been a member of this community, the most local community here in Wilton, for many years, and any successful project that's going to be adopted by the community, really the community members need to feel as though they've had some sort of a say in it, or at least been kept informed of what's going on, and that's really why we're having this discussion here. Is we really want to provide the public as a historic site, but of course as a member of the community, as our nonprofit and our historic site are members of the greater community here in the towns of Wilton, Moreau, Saratoga Springs, all the local communities here, Corinth, and we want the people within this area to be informed and to understand that they can have a an impact on the improvements that are coming for the Palmertown Range. And can you kind of explain, Laura, how they could get involved, some of the ways potentially?
Sure. So a few months ago, we had done a large survey and some interviews with community organizations, and just to get feedback on, again, what they want in a trail system, what kind of walks they like to take, what would benefit them, you know, what barriers there are to accessing local trails. And so we really want to build on that with the master plan when we start diving into site-specific design and actual trail building. We are always looking for people to get involved, volunteer, get out on the land with us, do workshops with us, learn more about the region, learn more about the history of this place. And, you know, if anyone is interested, feel free to get in contact with me and I can provide my contact information. But we're always looking for people to get involved because this is a community project and it's for the community. So we want this involvement. It's not just like the Palmertown project, it's for these towns, it's for everyone within the community as well as visitors from outside, and we want to really create this destination and recreation hub.
Yeah, I think it's a great resource. I'm sure Ray would agree, a great resource that we have here in our backyards. I mean, I live in Corinth, just on the other side, on the western side of the ridge, and Ray, you live
live in Wilton.
Down
just
in Wilton,
stone's
so
throw from here.
yeah, on the eastern side. So you have communities on both sides, and many communities within an easy drive of this place. But as you mentioned, you've got the visitors coming into the area every summer. There's Saratoga Springs, just 10 miles down the road here, is a major destination, international destination still,
Right.
just as it was, you know, back in the 19th century as well. And it continues to be a place where people come to have some of the creature comforts. You've got your outlets and your stores at exit 15 in Wilton off the interstate, but you also have within a just a 15-minute ride from there, you can be stomping through the forest here on the Palmertown Range. So it's nice to have that kind of dichotomy of both those both opportunities. I think that's why a lot of people are landing in Saratoga County, because you have that. You got your normal creature comforts, but you also have that kind of wild, Adirondack feeling, and that's drawn people here for almost 200 years.
Right.
Ben, when you mention the different municipalities, and Laura, you're talking about engagement, I think another thing that folks can do is talk to your local officials. This project runs through Moreau, Corinth, Wilton, Greenfield, City of Saratoga Springs. So talk to your local council members, your town supervisor, the mayor of Saratoga Springs, and let them know how important projects like these are to our community. Ben, you mentioned before about the average homeowner in this area. This area provides a great amount of the watershed that supplies the drinking water for all those homes.
Yes.
And it's important that if folks want clean water to drink, and to bathe in, et cetera. So there are a lot of important factors in this project. They're important to every single homeowner and business owner in this area.
And I think people are recognizing as development increases. We mentioned it earlier. There is a balance, and somebody has to keep that balance. So organizations like Saratoga Plan, other Open Space Institute, other places kind of help. Other organizations kind of help, maintain that balance. Because developers, they're going to develop. I mean, that's what they do. But conservation organizations, they conserve, and they kind of meet in the middle somewhere. And we hope for a good balance of that. And I know there's different types of agreements being hashed out about this. This is not just all land being given to as public lands, conserved specifically. Some of this is actually easements, I would imagine, public easements and things. So there's property owners that are allowing some type of public, will be at some point, if not already, will be part of this network of trails, and being kind enough to allow an easement or a trail to cross their property. And of course, that is a wonderful legacy for any property owner. Another way for people to get involved, if you are near or on the Palmertown Range and you own property, this would be a great time to get involved. And if you're willing to actually work with those that are planning the trail system. Now, you briefly said 50 miles of trails. That's ambitious. That sounds like a lot of trails to me. I mean,
Yeah.
now how far is it from? I'm trying to think, from Saratoga Springs to Moreau Park. I know that Moreau State Park. I know that the Palmertown Range actually continues geologically.
Right.
But this is what we're focusing on as the
Stepping
main
right at the
area.
Hudson, yeah.
I've seen the maps, and the maps are all available of this, and the project materials are all available on Saratoga Plan's
Plan's
website.
website,
So if you want to, take a deeper dive, see some of those maps, and see the scope of this project, it's actually quite large. So we're looking at about how many miles do you know from? Because we're about right now we're sitting about 6 miles, I would say, from Moreau Lake State Park down the ridge, and from the main campground, I should say. And down in Saratoga Springs is about, I think, 8 miles or so to Broadway. So 8 and 6, about 15 miles, you would say, of ridge line.
Yes.
And that's you're talking about connecting to the I'm not sure what they call it, the pathways that already exist within the city of Saratoga Springs,
Right.
that immediate area, and how to you're looking at ways to connect that so that people could literally start on, let's say, around the North Broadway area of
The
Saratoga
Greenbelt
Springs,
Trail.
and find a way all the way up through to the ridge line and up to Moreau State Park if they
Yes.
wanted to make a long day of it.
Yes, so we are looking to connect from the Greenbelt Trail in Saratoga Springs downtown up through the Palmertown Range, have a spine trail run up to Moreau Lake State Park, so go through Daniels Road State Forest, Lincoln Mountain State Forest, connect to Moreau Lake State Park, and even connect then to the Hudson River. And then we're also looking for a spine trail to connect from Moreau Lake State Park to the town and village of Corinth at West. But within that, off of that spine trail, this is where we really get into the inclusivity part of it, where we are planning smaller loops or smaller connector trails for people who aren't long distance hikers or people who aren't rugged hikers or mountain bikers who don't want to do 30 miles in a day. We're looking for those smaller loops and smaller grade loops, for people who might have handicap issues or families with small children who don't want to commit to a few miles, want to just do a small loop, see a waterfall or see a creek, and then head back and have lunch with the family. We're looking to create that experience for everyone and be as inclusive as possible, since the main part of the core belief of this trail is friendship and inclusivity. So
That's wonderful,
Yeah.
and it's wonderful to have as a main goal. And I know that when there's enough trails there, it's going to be a matter of coming up, and there's other activities too that go along with hiking,
Right.
and some of the simple activities, the main activities. You talk about things like potentially letterboxing or the what's the other name for that?
Geocaching.
Geocaching. Things that you can go and kind of have a little exploration, and maybe there's a patch in the works, maybe a hiking patch of some sort that Ray can get to add to his. I don't know if he's got room on his backpack, but
You can never have too many patches.
that's right. Yeah, he's going to need a second backpack just for patches. But the idea is that a lot of these places now up in the Adirondacks, other places are doing patches or stickers or things where they do a little challenge, and the challenges aren't just for seasoned hikers. They're sometimes for families. They have separate challenges that are all doable by people of different abilities. Visit this certain pond, visit this certain location, and then you can get some sort of a little prize for it. So perhaps that'll be part of it as well. I know Ray would enjoy it, so he's going to be the first one waiting for for it to open the main trail and try to get from Saratoga Springs up to Moreau Lake State Park in a day. But that's the kind of exciting stuff, and people can make their own challenges too, and make their own days of it. I know I've gone out personally, and I've put the bike on the back of the car, and I've put the boat on the car, the kayak, and I have hiked, biked, and boated in the same day, a triathlon. I'm not a triathlete, but I'm not going to pretend to be. But I did all three in a day because it was so convenient to do that, and that's what this Palmertown Range offers, is a place to do multiple types of recreation, and that's not necessarily possible in other places. So it's really a great local resource. I mean, you can't say enough about it. So we'll bring it full circle. This has been a wonderful conversation. We're going to bring it full circle and say, here we are sitting at Mount McGregor, which is kind of almost the center point, between Saratoga, the beginning and the end. Now, we would love, you know, the historic site here. We are a state historic site, a park, essentially a New York State Parks system and site. The former prison, the prison closed 8 years ago about, and it brought some real challenges to making this place open to the public. Now, it would be wonderful for the public to be able to use this place 12 months of the year. But unfortunately, because of the decommissioned facility, which is over 300 acres on the mountain here, and over 100 structures, it brings serious safety and security concerns to the mountain. So unfortunately, public access is limited to the time when the historic site is open. So we look to a time in the future, and we hope, and we look for anyone's ideas in this regard, to how we can solve some of these security issues and improve the access here on Mount McGregor specifically. Now, there's a wonderful network of trails in Moreau State Park just to the west of here and just to the south of here, but to be able to come to a place like the Eastern Overlook here on snowshoes, perhaps, because we're closed in the winter. There's no real opportunity to do that, but if we could find a way for the public to be able to do that without running into security problems, we would love to be able to do that. So hopefully, and our great hope is to be able to work towards a future where we can be integrated into this trail network on the Palmertown Range, because you know this is a culturally, historically, and environmentally important place, and we feel like we're a part of the fabric of this mountain range.
Absolutely.
And we want to be a community resource. Now, the exciting thing is that we currently here at the park in the historic site, we are currently undergoing a site master plan development. What this means is we're actually starting to plan for the future. So we want to be able to accommodate the number of visitors that want to come here, and so part of that is to look into the possibilities of public access here, and we will continue to do so, and we look for any public input. You can certainly reach us on our website, grantcottage.org, and email us at info@grantcottage if you have any ideas as to what this place could be. And I'll turn this over to both Ray and Laura for their input. And this can be anything. This can be fantasies. It's okay. You know, we have this major campus, this infrastructure of buildings up here next to the historic site, this former correctional facility. And it's posed a lot of challenges for redevelopment. Now, I know Ray has been involved in different development projects throughout his years as a town official. What kind of vision do you see? How could you see this place becoming compatible with both the historic site and the greater network of recreation on the Palmertown Range?
Yeah. I've talked to a number of people about different uses for the the old prison area that have gone from a company from out of state that was thinking about it as a location to make movies, because there are some very unique buildings and unique places on this property that would be conducive to filmmaking. Restaurants, hotels, other types of development, for tourism. The property has its challenges, and I think particularly given the events of the past year and a half with the pandemic in place, things like development have become a particular challenge.
Yep.
But the potential up here is extraordinary. If you haven't been to Grant Cottage, it's a step back in time. It's extraordinarily well maintained. The history, and I don't think anybody knows the history better than Ben does. To the greatest extent that the private sector, the state of New York, the regional officials can do what they need to and do what they have to make this property a success. It ought to be among their priorities moving forward.
And I think you touched on something that was very interesting. I like that you touched on the fact that this has this real time capsule type feeling to it. The historic building, the cottage that Grant lived in his final home here on the mountain. but it's really inseparable from its environment. It's, this beautiful overlook is somewhere where Grant and his family took some solace during his final illness. He was struggling from throat cancer, and I think there's and many others that came here for tuberculosis, a terrible lung malady, and some of them did not survive. But this was a place they took solace and at least had some sense of peace, perhaps in their final days here. And so there's that cultural and historical significance that is tied in with the land. And again, these structures, as you mentioned, being older, built mainly in the early 20th century, there are some real challenges, things like remediation of harmful substances. That kind of thing is something where it's a challenge for developers. But certainly I think that if there is a potential for redevelopment, somebody's going to have to be very committed and have good funds. But I think I think there is certainly a potential. Now, as far as the historic site is concerned, when the prison closed, I believe about 30 some odd acres were added to the historic site, and that's wonderful. And we certainly will someday utilize that acreage. Although for our immediate plans, it is not quite as useful. We have 38 acres are basically on the steep hillside here. So we don't have the room we need for critical infrastructure improvements, which include parking and a larger pavilion to host the size events that we want to do. We want to be more and more of a community resource here on Mount McGregor, and those plans are being put in the site master plan, but they hinge to some extent on a 5-acre parcel of the former prison property. It's undeveloped, but it's just adjacent to the cottage. So it's a stone's throw from the cottage, and it's the location where the Hotel Balmoral was in the 1880s. So it's got historic significance. And we're hoping to have that land transferred to the Parks Department to be able to expand our site and accommodate even more visitors. And that may come into the discussion in the future on how people interact with this place. Perhaps this becomes a hiking destination or somewhere where people can maybe even hike from. It depends on how things work out. But we certainly want to be tied in with that natural network so that people can go on a hike and hike to Grant Cottage.
Right.
We have some wonderful paths here on the property that you can take advantage of, but certainly to be able to come in out of the woods off from one of these other major destinations within a mile or so of this site, to be able to do that would be wonderful. So we look forward to a day where we can solve these issues and be even more tightly knit. We certainly support the work of Saratoga Plan and the other the other partners that are making this happen, and of course the townships and their support for us and for this plan. And it's nice to see so many groups working together. I haven't really heard of anything too much of negativity. I've heard a lot of positive things about this, and I think that's because of the number of people that you pull into the conversation. And certainly that's what we're looking to do is to pull you into the conversation there at home. Everybody should be a part of this, whether it be helping to create a trail or giving ideas of what you think Mount McGregor could be. You can always send emails. You can send messages on Facebook, social media. Get a hold of, as Ray said, get a hold of your local officials. Let them know what you want in your community, what you want this land used for, and some of the things you would like to see. And I think, as Laura said, there is plans to try to make this as widely accessible as possible. These for different uses. And so I think they're already going down that road. But certainly there's always room for input, and we invite it here at all times. Feedback is so important to us here at the historic site, and I'm sure it is
Yes.
to Saratoga Plan and its partners as well. So I don't think I gave Laura a chance. Laura, what could Mount McGregor be? What could Mount McGregor be?
I mean, truly, the possibilities are endless when you're dreaming, and then the reality kicks in. You have to think
Well,
about...
it's going to be your personal summer camp here, right? That's, your personal retreat.
Well,
yeah.
Selfishly. No,
Yeah.
there was actually a case study where there was a very similar situation out on the West Coast. I think it was Oregon. There was an abandoned prison or mental health facility that had just been, abandoned and it had been like this big eyesore. A developer came in and had a passion for this project and turned it into a like high-end campsite with yurts and like cabins and, you know, a little resort with a hotel and, you know, restaurants. And then the rest of it was used for a musical like festival ground, and they would host concerts or different state fairs, things like that. And it became this huge hub for economic development, and, you know, people, it was useless before, no one could have access to it, and now the entire community could come and enjoy, and they could get bands from all over to play. And so just selfishly even thinking for myself, like, I would love to have something like that right here and just come up for a day and listen to a day of great music and have a good local beer and, you know, sit on the grass and just enjoy the views of the mountain. But
yeah,
that would be
what is that? What is it? Red Rocks. There's places where they have music venues that are very. It's aesthetics that bring people there, and you have the music, and then the aesthetics, the sunset. Places that have outdoor amphitheaters.
Yep.
I mean, we do have Saratoga Performing Arts Center, SPAC as it's called, locally, but certainly there's enough people within this region, enough people come to this region to have a second venue or even a third venue. So, you know, I think there's room for that type of thing. And they're historic structures. So if you know, these structures are generally mostly almost 100 years old, and they're made out of stone, a lot of them, the foundations. So, you know, they're not going to be easy to demolish or remove. So if there's a way to incorporate them into any plan that's done up here. And, you know, I used to work at the shirt factory in Glens Falls, and that's a good example of taking old industrial structures and turning them into something completely different. So that was what they did with that. Is it was an old shirt factory, an old mill, and then they took it and somebody purchased it and opened it up to rentals. So they cut it into essentially different size units that you could rent within the 3 floors of the structure. And so, you know, you had artists, you had health practitioners, you know, a wide assortment. You know, some were private and some were, you know, so you could have this, you know, take one of these buildings like the 70,000 square foot, what was known as the Rest House, and you could, you know, rent portions of that to different, you know, businesses, artists. So there is that idea that you could have a cooperative effort up here,
Right.
where you're not trying to sell 300 acres at once, you know, over 300 acres at once, that you're allowing people to come up with a, you know, reuse plan and redevelopment that comes maybe in phases. And, you know, because we do, you know, at the historic site, we really do, you know, would love to see somebody redevelop this place in a way that's compatible both with the trail system and the greater vision for the Palmertown Range, but also with the historic site, of course. So Ray mentioned the videos, the possibility of turning it into a filming location. I was a little concerned at the you know, maybe some of the explosions and you think about a zombie running around inside the fence. They're trying to film a movie. But again, those things can be worked out no matter, you know, if anybody comes in. We would love to see development up here, you know, that works well with the overall vision for the place. And I know, obviously, the local community wants to see this place be productive instead of just sitting here as a safety and security issue for the community. So, you know, it's something that will certainly take a lot of, you know, vision and things, but certainly, you know, discuss it with your representatives, and also, you know, send your ideas to places like Saratoga Plan, to us, and hopefully we'll see a bright future. You know, I think many more people I know are visiting the historic site and experiencing this beautiful place. And so we have a great hope for the future of Mount McGregor, and we look forward to working with, you know, groups, organizations like Saratoga Plan to, you know, try to integrate this historic site even more into that overall vision. Do you have just because I didn't touch on it earlier, and people may be wondering this in their head, because I am. Is there any timelines? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that's kind of,
Loose
it's
timelines,
tough.
but
It's
yeah.
tough, yeah.
So the master plan, the final draft, is expected to be delivered to the Palmertown project partners in July of this year. Once that happens, we will be moving directly into site-specific plans and more land acquisition with the rest of the Sarah B. Folk Charitable Trust Foundation grant that we got. So we have a few projects that are like ready to go. The landowners have signed on, we have funding, people have volunteered, we're ready to start building trails. So after July, we want to do a site-specific design for a few of these specific parcels throughout the Palmertown Range, and then get right into trail building. So next year, we're hoping to have trail building volunteers and then open it up to the public on certain pieces of land so they can start really enjoying what I feel like I get to enjoy all the time, these lands that aren't even open to the public yet, but I'm just tromping around on them, just like, oh, I can't wait till everyone else can see this too. So loose timeline, we hope to have a few things open next year and start building. And then, I mean, this is a long-term project and funding is always going to be on our minds. And, you know, we're in it for the long haul. We have commitment. Conservation is always a long game. There's passion and there's love for this land, and we want to plan for the future and future generations to enjoy it as well.
And that's so great that, you know, and you know, I think we've all touched on it, the fact that people can, within whatever their capabilities are, there are ways that they can contribute, whether it be actually, you know, helping with trail building crews, designing, even just their input, you know, but there's ways that people can get involved with this process. So the process itself, because I've done trail work, and Ray, you've done some, you know, the trail work itself is fulfilling. It's a way to get and connect with the nature and know you're building something for the future. And I think that, you know, people look at it as two separate things. Oh, I'm hiking today, or I'm trail building today. But the reality is, well, you're usually doing both. You got to hike to where you're trail building. But the idea is that they're not. They're all time in nature. You know, that's the core here, is time in nature, conserving nature, improving access to the Palmertown Range in this area, and it's all part of, you know, to me, when I go out, I'm not as concerned whether I'm kayaking, whether I'm hiking, whether I'm mountain biking, or trail building. It's just spending that time in nature for its benefits.
Right.
As Ray touched on, the benefits are there physically and mentally, and people just started to really fully comprehend that and fully understand that. A lot of people discovered that during the COVID pandemic. So hopefully that'll stick, and it'll be a habit that they maintain, and we'll continue to see the improved use of these open spaces around us. And so we're excited about the future. Any last words from you guys? Have been great panelists. I couldn't have asked for better panelists today. This has been wonderful.
You know, Laura got me thinking about her vision, and I'm thinking about the first annual Ulysses S. Grant Arts, Music, and Film Festival.
See?
Right here.
He was, you know, Ulysses S. Grant was a man that, I remember I was just doing, we just became a fully solar site here. We have a solar-powered array that's running the entire site. So we were the first state park to actually be, you know, fully off-grid. So we're excited about that. But I was doing a little research to see what Grant might have thought of solar power. Grant was an early advocate for conservation. He understood. He signed off on the first national park, Yellowstone, in 1872, as President of the United States. And, you know, he had, you know, an eye for progress and for improvement and development, but also in balancing that with conservation. There was always that balance. And, you know, I think he understood the concept that you can't keep taking without giving something back.
Right.
But he also did like, he didn't have much of an ear for music, interestingly enough, but he did like the arts. He liked visiting museums. He liked going to plays, you know, performances. So certainly, you know, he appreciated the cultures. He went around the world on a 2-year world tour later in his life, and he appreciated cultures and performances. You know, maybe not the music as much. He didn't have an ear for it. He may have had an issue with the way that he processed music. There's a name for that. But regardless, I think it would be an appropriate use. I agree. I think having an arts and entertainment venue of some sort, and then, you know, different little cottage industries or little businesses that go along with that. You know, that can basically be a part of that. So I love the idea, and like you said, it's been done before. Any other last words?
Yeah, so in context of the Saratoga Folk Friendship Trails, at the end of the day, everyone recreates differently and uses the outdoors differently. But with these core beliefs of friendship and inclusivity, we want to make sure that there's a space for everyone to enjoy this beautiful range however they see fit. And we can't totally do that unless we hear from everyone, even if you don't consider yourself a hiker or an outdoor enthusiast or a mountain biker. Your opinion matters, and what you want in a trail matters, and we want to provide that opportunity throughout the range for everyone. And so getting involved in this project, or voicing your opinion, going on saratogaplan.org, emailing us, going on social media sites, that's how you can get your opinion to us. And we truly want to hear from you, because this is a project that we're working with the community for, but it's for the community as a whole. So your input is priceless.
We need your input. We need your input. It is very important, and I'll echo that as well. And so we'll wrap up our wonderful panel discussion today, and I appreciate Ray and Laura being here, taking the time out to inform the public, inform you about what's going on the Palmertown Range, and hopefully you learned a little something and you'll maybe want to explore a little bit more now. And just as a finale here, we'll do on 3, we'll do Happy Trails Day. Is it Happy National Trails Day? Let's do Happy National Trails Day.
Right.
Happy National Trails Day. 1, 2, 3.
Happy National Trails Day.